not new within even the Muslim community, right? And within the Black Muslim experience, right? Muslims didn't just show up to America 9/11. We didn't just wake up and become Muslim. Muslims have been in this country since the days of slavery. They were born here on slave ships. And just thinking about how we can ensure that we're connecting the dots and making sure that history is all connected, right? And that we're not repeating history. And I would rather have a much larger conversation with all of you and get you guys involved in this discussion, but the most touching story for me, the most recent one, has been the case of Tariq Mahenna. And I would encourage you guys to look up his story. He was a guy that basically what he was doing was he was translating things online. And he was an American Muslim that was really upset about what the US government was doing militarily in Muslim countries. They were raping women, they were killing children, innocent people, right? Not to say that's what the entire military is doing, but that's what we're doing in places like Afghanistan. Like, we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't have been in Iraq in the first place. I mean, we realized that later on that it was too damn late, right? So this guy, what he was doing was he was translating what our government perceived as extremist views online, right? And he was translating them. He was translating from Arabic to English, English to Arabic. That's what he was doing, right? And if we're going to prosecute a Muslim man for translating extremist views, then we need to start prosecuting militia groups in this country, right? Yeah. And racist, like, you know, it's just really, you know, for me personally, like, that story really touched it. And what I'm going to end on is I want you to the bravery of this young man who's been convicted for 17.5 years for doing absolutely nothing, just for having an opinion and for having thoughts in his mind. And he read a statement that day. He didn't just take his conviction and just be like, I'm going to take it, I'm going to spend 17.5 years. He stood up proud. And this is what he said. I'm going to read just the excerpt. And if you read his entire statement, this statement 25 to 30 years from now is going to be read in our schools across the country. We're going to learn from it. This is what he said. He said, I learned one more thing in history class. America has historically supported the most unjust policies against the minorities, practices that were even protected by the law, only to look back later and ask, what were we thinking? Slavery, Jim Crow, the internment of the Japanese during World War II, each was widely accepted by American society. Each was defended by the Supreme Court. But as time passed and America changed, both people and courts looked back and asked, what were we thinking? Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist by the South African government and given a life sentence. But time passed, the world changed. They realized how oppressive their policies were, that it was not he who was a terrorist, and they released him from prison. He even became president. So everything is subjective, even this whole business of terrorism and who is a terrorist. It all depends on the time and place and who the superpower happens to be at that moment. And I think that if you read his speech, for him to stand up against those who prosecuted him and to talk to them about his experience as an American Muslim, as a pharmacist. I mean, this guy is not just some Joe Schmo guy sitting at home. I mean, this guy is a professional. This guy is a member of our community, of our society, prosecuted for having views that many of us in this room have. We are anti-war, we are anti the killing of civilians to gain oil on the backs of people across the world. And this person was prosecuted for his First Amendment freedom of speech, which I still think I have, and that's why I'm happy to see up here. But unfortunately, many people in our community are so dug deep into this fear that they will not come out and speak like those of us up here. So for them, we are the risk takers in our community when in fact all we're doing is exercising the very right we're supposed to have. So I really